Bonjour mes amis, on a un nouveau film aujourd'hui. Sorry, the translation broke in my brain. Okay, so a shocking number of you have asked me to cover Under Paris, so here we are with the French shark movie. Yeah, I know, the only thing scarier than a shark is a bougie shark. And I wasn't really sure what to expect from this movie. Like, the premise is obviously absurd. There's a giant shark in the Seine going after triathlon contestants, but the tone of the trailer kinda seemed serious. So I was worried it was gonna be like Night Swim, taking itself way too seriously when it should steer in a totally different avenue, or Tarot, where it basically gets half the tone right, but then nerfed itself with its lead. Like, it very easily could have been going for a Day After Tomorrow vibe, but that still didn't quite match what I was seeing. So imagine my surprise when Stephen King said it was actually quite good compared to his expectations, with an amazing final 25 minutes. Remember that. Amazing. And that settled it. If the king himself endorsed it, I'm down to give it a go. Actually, the main reason is because I found this fun and festive hat. I sought this out. I paid 30 Canadian dollars for this. His endorsement is definitely why I considered watching it, but then I remembered that sometimes Stephen King is known to have some questionable movie and media opinions. I mean, he called Twilight teenager porn when he wrote It. He can't be trusted. I'm joking, don't come at me. I will still question his opinions on Kill Bill, but you know, we all have questionable movie opinions. People have been coming at me for saying The Strangers Chapter 1 is better than Night Swim in Imaginary, which it is. And I'd say Stephen King's track record is a little bit more on the positive side, so you know what, we're gonna trust him. And while I still think that Night Swim had more potential than this movie, in terms of execution, a giant shark swimming around Paris murdering people is just way more entertaining than the haunted pool. The shark is also just misunderstood, guys. There's just too much pollution in the ocean messing with the food supply. It had no choice but to venture inland. But at least you don't have to resort to eating swimming contestants with today's sponsor, Factor. Factor provide ready-to-eat, never frozen meals right to your door that are prepped in as little as 2 minutes, so you'll always have time for a delicious meal. When I tell you that I've been desperate to try Factor for ages, I am not exaggerating. It just hasn't been available here, so I've just been in this terrible cycle of trying to cook more, but mostly just ordering in multiple times a week because I just don't have the time or will to cook. Especially in the summer, I don't want to cook when it's hot. I want to spend all my available free time out doing things. And finally, it's available here, so I have the convenience of a full meal right in my fridge, which I honestly only found out about because all my friends already started using it. With Factor, you can choose a variety of different meals, which includes Calorie Smart, Keto, Vegan, and Veggie, or my go-to Protein Plus. Today I made honey butter diced chicken, and it's just so good. I'm so happy. This makes my life so much better. Oh my god. So make sure to check out Factor for yourself. Head on over to factor75.com or click the link in the description down below and use code JEDI50 to get 50% off your first box and 20% off your next month of orders. That's code JEDI50 at factor75.com to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month of orders. But let's dive on into the movie. I literally say that in every video, but here it gets to be a pun. And it starts with a quote that says it's based on Charles Darwin, basically saying that the strongest species are the ones that can adapt to the ever-changing world. And yeah, sharks and alligators definitely fit the bill. They've been evolving for millions of years. So I guess we're about to be shown the devastating consequences of that next stage of evolution. Because now, their home, the ocean, is under greater strain than it's ever been in terms of unnatural causes. That's pretty much what this movie is going for, with some classic Jaws mare energy thrown in. It starts with some environmental group talking about the seventh continent, which is just a massive barge of plastic and garbage in the ocean that obviously wreaks havoc on any wildlife that gets pulled in. But then, their radars go off for something called Beacon 7. A mako shark they've been tracking called Lilith, which just seems to be asking for trouble with a name like that, who now seems to be under this barge, and they just dive right on in there. I get that mako attacks aren't common, but like maybe just not the smartest thing to do, but like what do I know? I'm not a shark expert. I know you might be thinking otherwise because of this hat, but no. I will say though, this is pretty much my greatest fear, you know, being stranded in the ocean, getting a little nibbled on by a danger fish who thinks I look like a flailing seal. But this movie actually isn't doing a very effective job of making me afraid of what's lurking in the deep, which is impressive because we just saw that The Strangers Chapter 1, which is god-awful, did still manage to get that anxiety receptor reaction in my brain when things happen. This somehow not doing it. Maybe it's because the shark looks so terribly fake, but that's okay. But once they get down there, they come across a dead whale that had gotten caught up in fishing line. God, we are so terrible as a species sometimes, but it's also got a big old chomp out of it before a bunch of female mako sharks start swirling in, which apparently very weird behavior. There's a lot of panic going on before Big Mama right there in front of them. And she is huge, but the concerning part is that she's apparently gone from 2.5 meters to 5 or 7, whichever it happens to be here. And this dude rightfully decides to call it, that the situation is way too dangerous to continue, but Sophia up top is like, come on, we need a sample so we can figure out how this happened. And I don't know what they thought was gonna happen when they stabbed a shark who's been growing at an impossibly rapid and inexplicable rate, but it's not good. And yeah, she just massacres them all in seconds, very painfully, very unfortunate when one of these people was her husband. And then she decides, it's okay, I'm gonna save them. She just dives in there with snorkeling gear to somehow pull him out. I mean, oh no, that was her husband. But she's just like, oh my God, maybe he's still alive down there, and that's just his arm was the only thing disconnected and somehow not inside the shark. But Lilith senses that there is a new player in the ocean and swiftly starts to attack. She somehow manages to dodge the head-on bite, but then the fishing line on Lilith's tail gets stuck to her foot and just starts dragging her down underwater. And I'm talking like meters in seconds here. She is going down. Realistically, they do show that something in her eardrum explodes from the pressure changes, but then somehow she manages to cut herself off from the fishing line and make it back up to the top when she'd already expelled all of her air, had already been under the water for a while, and then somehow didn't get the bends popping back up. I probably just wouldn't have had the shark pulling her down that far because it was down. This is what I mean by it having this weird tone of in between trying and being dumb. Like, it makes for this very weird combination. And I feel like if I had seen this with a group of friends where we could have like tuned in and out of like the more boring parts, it probably would have been a lot more of a fun experience. It definitely does get some genuine laugh out loud moments from me though, which probably wasn't always the intention, but take your wins. And I really thought she was gonna be deaf after this, but apparently not. She just gets like nosebleeds now and stuff. But yeah, okay, that's fine. So the movie is going in some kind of environmental angle. Let's see how that pans out. Ooh, it's Amanda from the future. It pans out not well. It feels a lot less like a smart horror movie and more like a movie that just wants to add in science poorly. But that's okay.
Who said that? The internet says your whole team was eaten by sharks. Is that true?
Jesus, man, kids are such little shits. But as she's leaving the aquarium, this girl comes up and says that she managed to like hack into the beacon on the shark and that somehow Lilith has worked her way into the Seine to the heart of Paris and potentially ate the driver from a car that went into the river last night, but no big deal. Now, Sophia really isn't on board with this because mako sharks can't survive in fresh water, but this is where they rope the environmental stuff back in, that climate change and pollution may have changed her behavior. So she's just a poor lost shark trying to survive. I don't know, it's an awful big ocean to spontaneously end up right where she is, but I'm okay, they don't actually address that, but that's fine. So Mika's plan here is to communicate with Lilith in the water to get her back to safety. Yeah, I don't know if you can communicate with a shark that way, and I feel like what you actually need is like an environmental relocation team, but okay. Oh my God, instead of Free Willy, it's Free Lily. Sophia's still not sold though. She assumes that the beacon must have fallen off and is just drifting around. But when she gets home, she goes through her box of research stuff, all her memories, the tragedy, then sees that the tracking beacon is in fact showing the shark in the Seine, moving in a way that would suggest that it's not just the current pushing it around. But she decides to head out to see if it actually is the shark because it's now swirling the location where Mika plans to be to examine the car. And Mika's already down there and finds teeth marks on the door. Okay, so when she said that the car went in the river and they never found the driver, my first thought was, well, surely they would have seen that a shark was involved in that. But then I thought, oh, okay, maybe the driver got out of the car himself and then the shark just like snatched him, so there'd just literally be no evidence that the shark was there at all. So imagine my shock when the car does have teeth marks in it, meaning that they didn't even go down to try to recover the body. Why is the car still in here? And this girl is just such a dumbass. Like, the cops show up, so her girlfriend starts yanking on the line to pull her up, and like, instead of coming up, she just disconnects the line. Like, worst case, that could have been her letting you know that the shark is there, which it is. They're just not aware of that yet. It's just so dumb. Thankfully, all she gets is arrested, but less thankfully, this lovely poor man with a cute dog somehow ends up snatched up by the shark while on land, and now the dog is alone. Terrible. Should have been the girl. Sophia doesn't see this happen, but she comes across the dog barking in the water and just keeps looking for it overnight. But what I find so funny is that while there's all these people just sitting watching the water, no one sees this fin scooting by in the background. Like, you have the tracker right in front of your face. Why aren't you just looking in that direction? But whatever, the police don't believe that there's a shark in the Seine, and even when Sophia gets involved, they don't really believe her either, even though she's a documented expert with a tracking device on it. And this is after they found this poor man's body clearly ripped in half. Love the fast trauma cuts, though. Even when they agree to look for it, they don't even trust her expertise for the best way to find it, which almost gets them all killed. We can just see a shark zipping back and forth in what seems to be like one of those like underwater catacomb entrances. And it's so funny because one of my friends was like, oh my God, does the shark end up in the catacombs? And I was like, surely not, but seems like it. That's how it's hiding in areas that should be too shallow for it to be unseen. But this dumb fuck Mika basically tries to get them all killed even harder, mainly because she thinks they're just gonna kill the shark. She'll later try to reason this away by saying that sharks don't try to attack people without good reason. And look, I'm all on team shark. You know, if you get bit in the ocean, you're the one who's not really supposed to be there. And most of the time they just think you look like a wounded animal and go for a little nibble. But in this case, she's already commented that the state of the world could be causing massive behavioral changes in this specific shark, and saw that it ripped this poor man in half, who I'm sure did nothing to antagonize her unless he was reading a copy of Jaws. But yeah, to prevent them from interfering with the shark, she has her gal pal cut the signal, which almost gets them killed, and then this asshole just accuses Sophia of doing it, even though she really shouldn't care to be overly protective of this shark, considering it killed her friends and her husband. But hey, they finally do a radar sweep and pick it up, so you think, great, let's just block off the exit ways, put out a public warning, catch it, and you're golden. But problem being, there's about to be a massive triathlon in the Seine, which to me makes no sense. I know that France is currently working on cleaning it up for people to swim in by next year, but that is not a thing you can do currently, and this movie is very clear about this whole place still being a polluted disaster zone. Look how dirty this water is.
Here you are asking me to call the mayor and cancel everything? How am I supposed to explain something like that?
I don't know, show them the radar and the half-eaten body? Don't just toss in an entire human sushi buffet at her. But the mayor is dead set on this triathlon. Apparently because of all their cleaning efforts, it's a showcase to have Paris host the Olympics, which honestly just seems like a terrible place for those. But it means they have a very limited window to try to sedate and catch Lilith, which of course Mika is tracking. And she decides to have a little viral moment, making the correct point that the way we run the world is killing it and us at an accelerated rate. Bringing it all back down to sharks who have been the ruler of the ocean for so many years, and that we do to them is disgusting, which is also true, but then flips it to Lilith being this grander message to save the future. No, if you mean metaphorically, it's a message, but she's making it sound like this is step one. We do this, and we're gonna, in 20 years, we're golden. Which I really don't think it'll do, and what's about to happen next certainly isn't gonna help. Instead of asking people to push for an actual humanitarian organization to become involved and help catch and relocate the shark, she asks people to squat up in a tight space where the shark is hiding. Which, thanks to the gal pal, the cops also know is the catacombs near the sewage system. And Mika's genius plan to try and save the future is to try and guide the shark back to the ocean with sonar. Oh, that's not a very good plan, is it? I also literally can't believe how many people know they're here for a shark and have their feet in the water. Ugh, that's literally the only part of this movie that's made me a little bit edgy. I'm like, get your feet out of the water. And Mika just climbs right on in before the police come flooding in, and we discover that Mama seems to have had a baby and she's just petting it.
Mika, ne le touche pas.
While Sophia is just rightfully freaking out about her getting out of the water, because you know what could count as provoking the shark? Messing with its baby! To be fair, the panic here seems way too intense and probably isn't remotely helping the situation, but when this dude tries to save her, she breaks free and is immediately snatched up. Holy shit. I didn't expect her to go like that. Oh my god. She was the only one on your side. Oh, it's so fun. And then when she splashes back down, the force pushes a bunch of people in the water, so it's just a feeding frenzy. Somehow the dude that was already in the water remains unscathed, but you know, cool, good for him. And it's just entire chaos, like the girl that tried to help them ends up drowning, which seems like an oddly brutal way to go when there's a shark around. The guy that was trying to help her get out of the water ends up devoured, so Ideal just starts shooting the water. I guess that's not the worst course of action, but Jesus. Wait, he's not even dead. He got bit head on. What do you mean? Oh, he's missing an arm. That's something. Still gets dragged back down, though. This is brutal. Like, I joked about the triathlon basically being a buffet, but yeah, that is literally what this ended up being. But thankfully, all that shooting actually accomplished something. They got the baby, who, surprise, was somehow also pregnant. Much like Jurassic Park, life has found a way to let them reproduce with no males and to do so way younger than should be possible. Man, sharks just can't be sharks these days. They gotta be moms. So they realize that Lilith is not actually a mako shark. She is the first of a new adaptive species that reproduces like crazy, is adapted to being in fresh and salt water, and would ultimately colonize the ocean and the rest of Earth as an invasive species. I don't know, that seems a little bit excessive to me. I love how this movie really went from like, my God, look at all the damage we've caused. We really need to have a stronger conservation effort because we're just destroying everything. We gotta save the sharks. To, yeah, we did all that, but fuck them sharks. Somehow the death of 12 people still isn't enough to call off the triathlon, and the mayor just hands the protection efforts to the military instead. Literally has the media spinning things to say, well, look, if there was a shark in the Seine, it really just means that our cleanup efforts are working and people pay really good money to swim with sharks, and now they can do it for free. Like, if I had heard any whisper of a shark in there, I would not be competing in this. It's not like, oh yeah, you're swimming in the ocean, there's probably a shark there. This is a very small, confined place. This is potentially a dangerous animal that is lost and confused and looking for resources. But because the river police were told to stand down, their plan to stop Lilith is now officially off book and they need volunteers. It's feeling very Kira Task Force from Death Note. But the plan is to dive into their nesting area to plant explosives so that their crypt collapses, hopefully locking them all inside until they die, but also potentially a suicide mission for multiple reasons. And they're going to be trying to do all this while the triathlon is happening. And there are just dozens, maybe hundreds of sharks in here, absolutely wild numbers for the lack of food sources. You'd figure out of desperation they'd just be instantly snatching up everyone who came in here, but Lilith's the one to get the party started the second they finish placing the charges. And of course it's the dude in charge of the detonator that gets ripped apart first. Like, they do manage to set it off, but literally every time someone gets the detonator in their hand, that's who the sharks go after, and they only start eating things when she does. It's very interesting, but they, manage to get just far enough that the explosion isn't a major issue, but Sophia goes back to see if it worked, but Mama just breaks right on through. Basically, an entire failure of a plan, and somehow still doesn't eat her. It just chooses to hip check the boat instead. This is so dumb. And now it's only the volunteers that die. Those poor bastards. And just like that, she's off to her buffet. And the last 15 minutes of this movie become just a total bloodbath of absurdity. She's just picking them all off one by one, panic pushing people that were in total safety into the water. And we get yet another one of these beauty shots. It's just so goofy while trying to be so serious. And it's somehow about to get so much more dumb. The military starts to shoot at it, which again, at heart, not a terrible idea, especially when you have heavier duty weapons like this. But the movie's already let us know on multiple occasions that there are a bunch of live shells in the water here, and then they make sure to remind us of that fact verbally. Like, literally everybody's freaking out about shells in the water while it's doing these like hard cut shot montages to all the different guns going off. Sharks just dodging bullets left and right like as you just see all of these like bombs on the ground. And it's not even shooting the shells that seems to set them off. It's the force of Lilith's propulsion underwater that disrupts them and then sets off a chain reaction of explosions, which then sets off a chain reaction of the bridges collapsing. And Lilith's still just like zipping through it all like an action star with a no injury clause in her contract. It's just so fucking goofy. I can't handle it. And then it just starts flooding the entire city. Earlier they had mentioned these like underwater water basin things. So like anything that was regulating or holding water in certain areas is all just blasted wide open. I do think that this is a comically large amount of water. This is very unrealistic. Again, that's fine. The mayor then gets blasted into the water, but it cuts away before we see anything happen to her, which is a bummer. Like, if anyone deserved a swift eating, it was her. The only thing I can think of is like, maybe at the last minute, they were like, maybe we can do a sequel to this and maybe we want to bring her back. So they just like cut. It's like a hard cut to just like totally different characters in the water. So I don't know. But then it just ends with all these sharks free taking over the entirety of Paris, which I gotta say, bold ending. Humanity usually prevails in some way in one of these, so good for them. But it's like, again, is this leaving room for a sequel? Because the end credits just show the movement pattern of the sharks just like quickly infecting any water source all around the world, from like Venice to Tokyo to South America, which, I just don't buy happening, but okay. I just genuinely feel like once you see that Paris got literally demolished, you're just gonna start going scorched earth somewhere. You will kill the ocean to destroy these sharks. Like, I know humans. I know what we do. But yeah, apparently sharks inherit the earth at the end of this one. That was the movie. I would say not very good, not terrible, but again, the tonal shifts are a little odd. I wish it hadn't been taking itself so seriously to I don't know. It was definitely very fun when people were getting eaten in absurd ways. But yeah, Stephen King, of all the movies you could have promoted on Netflix, this is the one. I get that it's not remotely the same tonally, but Hitman is on Netflix right now. But at least The Strangers made me feel a little something. Like, it was dumb as hell, but it still did some really effective, like tension moments for me at least. This, I just don't quite know what it wanted. And I guess that's okay. When it was funny, I was having a good time. When it was trying to be a little bit overly sentimental and create comparisons between this ex-military dude and this person losing her entire team, I didn't give a shit. But yeah, that's Under Paris. Do you think we're gonna get a sequel? I'm sure I could Google that and see if that's even in the plans. But let me know what you guys are thinking. Do you think they left it open for a sequel? Or is this just kind of like one of those, yeah, no, the sharks just take over the world, the end? Which is fine. That's fun. It's exciting. I feel like the longer this shark is on my head, the more I'm like, yes, I welcome our shark overlords, of course. But that's gonna do it for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching, and thanks as always to my Patreon supporters and YouTube channel members. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. We are getting dangerously close to 600K. Leave a like on the video if you're into that kind of thing. All my other social medias are listed down below. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. I'm mostly okay, and we'll catch you all later.